as we celebrate Black History Month, we also want to recognize history in the making. And our next guest has been breaking barriers for years, first as Orlando, Florida's first African-American police chief in 1998, and then Orange County's first African-American Orange County sheriff in 2008. Well, now he's the first African-American to serve as the mayor of Orange County, Florida. So calling him a trailblazer is quite an understatement. We'd like to welcome to BNC now Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings. Good to see you, Mayor.
Hi, Laverne. It's great to be on the show with you. Thank you for inviting me to participate.
Well, I've been following your career for some time. There's so many accomplishments. And Mayor, it's Black History Month. You're simply paving the way for others. Tell us about your humble background and how did you end up breaking all these barriers to achieve so many accomplishments?
Well, first, I think there was a lot of prayer and supposition by people in my household, from my mother to my wife and others. Had a lot of mentors over the years who sowed into my life and my development. But I also prepared. You know, I had the opportunity to go to school at Florida State University and beyond to get a good quality education. And I've been in the right place at the right time. I've worked hard to get to this point. But I'm just really thrilled and really humbled to have had the opportunity to serve in so many different public roles. Although I started out after graduating from college as an accountant. My degrees were in finance and accounting, and I went back to school and got an MBA. But I shifted careers about 40 years ago. This is my 40th year now of public service, and I started out on the streets of Orlando as an Orlando police officer in 1981, and worked my way up through the ranks and had the opportunity to serve as chief of police. And of course, I have a great helpmate. My wife has been there along the way with me through the majority of this journey. She too obviously has served as the Orlando police chief and now serves in the United States House of Representatives, representing Florida's Congressional District 10. She's been a trailblazer in her own right. So sometimes when you have a helpmate and a spouse who can help you get to that point, it's really icing on the cake.
Well, congratulations on your 40 years. And yes, Congresswoman Val Demings has been on the Black News Channel. We love having her here. You guys certainly are a power couple. But let's talk about the fact that both of you are in law enforcement. And of course, the Black Lives Matter movement has really brought police injustices to the mainstream conversation. But, you know, you were a Black sheriff. You know that there are good cops, bad cops. Right now, we're seeing so many issues coming to the forefront. I want to get your opinion on how the Black community can move forward with a better relationship with the police force.
I believe that the key to really improving the relationship between people of color and law enforcement really starts with law enforcement having the opportunity to engage with them in non-confrontational ways. You have to put something in the bank and invest in your community relations, your community policing efforts, your problem-oriented policing efforts. And the way we have done that here in the Metro Orlando area was ensure that our law enforcement officers participated with our children, our youth, and the community, again, through those non-confrontational roles. They participated as volunteer coaches with our various athletic leagues. They were engaged in community job fairs. We have, over time, done things where we have assisted the homeless and done things that sometimes you should not always look to get some type of favor or marketing out of it. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. And so I believe that that's what works when the community is intertwined in the moral fabric, when law enforcement, I should say, is intertwined in the moral fabric of the community. It strengthens the community and it strengthens the bond between the community and law enforcement. So that's what I would say is pivotal to what we have to do as a community.
But let's talk about the fact that if you're a Black man driving somewhere and you get pulled over, you don't know what's going to happen when the police officer pulls you over. You're in an interesting position. I mean, obviously, you were the sheriff. But let's say you were, you know, on vacation in another part of the country and got pulled over. They're not going to know that you were the sheriff. How would you handle it if a police officer was perhaps seemingly agitating you or didn't seem to be stopping you for the right reasons if they didn't know that you were in fact a sheriff? I mean, what does the average black man do to handle those type of situations?
I think every black man in America has probably had that conversation with their children or had that conversation with their parents about if you interact with the police, here's what you should do. I have three adult sons. I had no girls, but all boys, and they're all men now. And so I had that conversation with them. As a black man, I have been stopped on a few occasions by law enforcement. And every occasion, it was a law enforcement officer who did not look like me. So what I have always said in terms of the advice that I would give, be respectful. To whom respect is given, respect, I think, is expected in return. And so when I was stopped by law enforcement, I did precisely what the law enforcement officer advised me to do. And if they did something that was contrary to what I knew as good policy, I would say to my sons and I said to myself, we can complain on another day. There's a process by which you can go forward and make your complaints. And sometimes if you try to duke it out with the law enforcement officers on the streets, you're never going to win that battle at that time because law enforcement officers are programmed to win, to win, to go home the same way that they came to work every day. But by the same token, I have an expectation that the men and women who worked under my direct tutelage and command when I was a law enforcement officer, I expected them to treat people with dignity and respect. And I would always say to them, treat people like they're your family members, and you give them the kind of service that you would want your family member to receive. And if it's good enough for your family, it should be good enough for them. And then if there's any conduct, then you should complain. There are processes by which you should be able to do that. And that's the way you can survive. I said, sometimes you can be dead right. And that's where sometimes you, because of anger, you become angry and you're out and you interact with a law enforcement officer and you know what you're experiencing is not just quite right. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where it's going to be a confrontation down the streets. Live for another day, complain to the authorities, and make it known. I also believe that you can bring about change from these agencies by volunteering, by becoming a law enforcement, by becoming a law enforcement officer. You can change those agencies from within by making certain that the agencies reflect the broad diversity of the communities that they serve.
All right, so follow the process. I want to switch now to your role as mayor. That's your current role. You're probably handling one of the biggest issues that the whole world is handling, which is COVID-19. Orange County, Florida, home to multi-billion-dollar international corporations, Disney, Universal. You're dealing with the pandemic. You're also dealing with economic fallout. How are you dealing with all of that?
Well, we have an economic recovery plan. We reached out to some of the brightest individuals in our community as we began to plan for our recovery from the pandemic. And as our businesses reopened, we said that the primary goal was for them to reopen safely. And so we wanted to ensure that they had plans of action in place to hopefully prevent the spread of the virus within our community. We have a mandatory executive order in place here within Orange County that requires individuals to wear facial coverings when they're out in the public. We made certain that we held the community accountable by having compliance or strike teams that would go in and do unannounced inspections of businesses to make certain that they were complying with the CDC guidelines. And that really was something that was contrary to what our governor here in the state of Florida chose to do. There is no statewide mandate for the wearing of facial coverings in Florida. However, within our county here in Orange County, which is the metropolitan Orlando area, we do have such an order. And so that has fared well for us. We have ensured that there was an abundance of testing available for our citizens to know whether or not they were positive or negative of the virus. And then we have began the process of vaccinating individuals here within our community. And so we have a long way to go. We have about 5% of our population that has been vaccinated at this point. And the goal is to get up to about 79% of our population. So as the federal government distributes additional supply of the vaccine in Florida, and the governor at this point of our state controls how that is redistributed throughout the state. As the supply chain becomes more robust, then we will get more inventory here, and I believe that the demand then will meet the available supply that we have. Right now, the demand far exceeds the supply that we have. The good news in all of this, we have people in our community who desire to be vaccinated, and they span the spectrum in terms of, because this is a multicultural community that we live in, we know that the virus has had a disparate impact on minority communities, people of color, Black and brown individuals. And so we have to ensure that we have equal access to the vaccine for those who live within our community. That's where I come in. As the Orange County mayor, my executive authority by county charter, during the state of emergency, I become the emergency manager for the entire county, inclusive of the municipalities. So here within Orange County, 1,000 square mile county with 13 cities within it, Orlando being the largest one, for all practical purposes regarding the state of emergency associated with this public health crisis, I become the point person for the entire county. And obviously, because of my background, I have a lot of experience with crisis management. So it has been a definite benefit to me, and I hope to the community, because of my broad experience in responding to numerous crises over the last 40 years.
Well, you certainly have your hands full, Mayor Demings. We appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us. We wish you luck in your endeavors handling the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, we salute you during Black History Month, being a trailblazer. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Black News Channel.
Thank you very much, and best wishes to you in your role there with the new channel.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. Take care.
Good.